Take a person, take a story, take you on a journey. It's your take.
A first for your take, and something a little bit different. Joining me today is a Scottish toy maker who has been attracting the attention of celebrity fans with his miniature models of film and television characters. Going under the name Lighting Boltz Toys, my guest had a burning ambition to run his own toy shop, which stems from childhood. To date, my guest has made many action figures, from Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne, Columbo, Eddie Murphy in the stand-up comedy film Rule, Robert De Niro as Jimmy Conway in Goodfellas, and the American filmmaker Stanley Kubrick. In 2021, my guest was commissioned by Nissan USA to create a toy of actor Eugene Levy for the Thrill Driver TV advertisement. My guest creations have been sold to toy lovers and collectors around the world, and comedian Leigh Francis is a big fan. Today I talked to David McGurk. We discussed David's youth and his childhood dream to open a toy shop, the relationship with his brother and his tragic loss in 2012, establishing Lighting Boltz and the creative process in making his toy models, the recent television commission and exposure it gained, and David's long-term plans and ambitions. Very warm welcome, David. Thank you for joining me for tonight's edition of Your Take.
Thanks for inviting me.
As I said in the introduction, this is going to be very different for us, the viewers, people listening to the interview when it goes out. We've interviewed people mainly from the creative industries, lots, musicians, actors, comedians, all sorts of people from all walks of life, but you're the first toy maker to talk on the program. So looking forward to finding out about the history and where that all comes from. Firstly, from your childhood love of action figures to that ambition to run your own toy shop, and then eventually doing what you do, which is making figures, as I've spoken about in the introduction. But let's go back to the very beginning, if we can. Can you tell us, first of all, when and where you were born, and just some background on your parents, who they are, and what do they do for a living?
Okay, so I was born in Scotland, Glasgow, 1977. My memory serves me correctly. And my parents, so both are gone now. Both my mum and dad were born in Glasgow just after World War II. So you can imagine what kind of upbringing they had. I think fear would really resonate in their upbringing. I think a lot of that was projected onto my family as well, to be honest, later. But yeah, so I think my dad was from a place called Springburn. And my mum basically lived in a place called Mary Hill, and they connected.
Would you say you were close to your parents, and what did they do in terms of, what did they do in terms of their careers, their day-to-day work?
Well, like I say, it was kind of, they grew up with nothing at all. They, I kind of make it sound as if they were together. They were together, but it was a very tough, trying relationship that they had. I had three older brothers, four of us, so it was incredibly difficult. My dad pretty much did anything that he could work-wise until he just didn't want to work. He was that guy. I think maybe if he'd done, I don't know, like a month's work or something, he would say, I think I've worked enough now. So my mum started work when she was 9. She was working in a hairdresser's, just mopping up and cleaning up hair, and any money that she got, she would give to her mum. So she never saw anything money-wise until she was like 15, 16, but she kept working and working and working. My dad left when I was 5, but it kind of kept coming in and out of my life. So his sort of history in terms of, or his story, in my view, it's a bit hazy, to be really honest. I feel that I knew him really well, but I didn't really ask him what he did work-wise. I mean, he worked for, it was like odds and ends, you know. It was like jobs like you would, like collecting bottles, you know, like bottles of juice. You would get delivered to your door. He'd collect them, give you more. So he didn't really express himself creatively or anything like that. I'm not really sure where that came from, to be honest, but it's right through my family. But both of them weren't like that.
Loss is obviously a very difficult thing to deal with, particularly when you lose parents, and it's kind of been a recurring theme in your life, which we'll kind of explore in a bit more depth later. But when they passed, how did you feel? How did you manage to kind of deal with that news?
Well, really, to be honest, I mean, I'll start with my mum, because she died first. She died when I was 21. She had lung cancer, and I think she got around about 3 months at the most. So to put you into the picture slightly, I was probably quite I'm hastening to use the word spoiled, but I was certainly more spoiled than my brothers were. And I kind of got a lot more than they did. So I was the last of the bunch. I was the one she wanted to really protect. I was the baby. So she wanted to really, really focus and put as much energy and effort into me as you could. So I went from school to college. I was just about to go to uni and stuff like that. But when she became ill, I had to basically run the house. So I had to go and get a job. I was, gone were the thoughts of going to college and going to do what I really wanted to do, which was anything creative, photography, art, anything that I could do. And I did do a bit of it, but it was just too much of a struggle to try and keep a house and all that kind of stuff. So she passed away in 1999 when she passed. My dad passed away in 2016, and I mean, he had addiction issues. He was an alcoholic, right? And by the time, I'd say for the last maybe 8 years of his life, he got like a thing that you call wet brain. If you drink far too much, it just makes your mind mush. So it did that to him. And eventually he passed away. And I did feel it, but not to the stage where it wasn't like my mum. That was a huge, huge wound. And it still is. It's still a tough one. But, as she would say to me, you can't sit and constantly beat yourself up about things, But I feel she did a good job. She did a good job.
You've given us a detailed portrait of your parents and spoken about tragically losing them at a young age. You've also briefly touched upon education, and you kind of said about missed opportunities with wanting to go to creative art school. I wanted to firstly ask, where did you attend school, and would you say they were happy years in your early life? And would you describe yourself as naturally academic? And did you have that opportunity to go on eventually to further education?
Well, so I went to a Catholic school. Wasn't my choice at all. And that's the way I was brought up. But I would say that in terms of happy, I wouldn't say it was a happy, it wasn't extremely upsetting or really, really a sad childhood or anything like that. But like I said earlier, we did grow up in a kind of fear-based mentality. My dad was violent. He was a violent guy. And he left when I was 5, but there was a lot of threat of him coming back. And he did do that a few times. And there was violence. There was me getting taken into the other room, plates flying about, and people, you know, like the sound of her being hit and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fear. So I wouldn't say that my childhood in terms of school was easy. As far as it goes with being naturally academic, I think if I had had more confidence when I was younger, that at that point in primary school, shall we say, may have been slightly easier. But thinking about it now, I don't think I was that gifted that way. I was more gifted with art. I mean, if you said to me, you know, if it was maybe maths or English or anything, we'll pick language, anything like that. If something was given to me, I'd be able to sit and work it out. I'd be able to do it. I wasn't daft or anything like that, but my mind was always somewhere else. It was always, as soon as the teacher said, today we're going to be drawing. Yeah. So that would be like Christmas to me, because that was escape. It was, I knew I could do it, and I knew I was able to focus on it. And I knew at the end of it, oh, David's done this drawing. You know, I knew that it would always be, you would always get praise for that, but I don't think I would get praise for working out an equation, you know. And later was the same in secondary school. And I ended up leaving at the end of 4th year. And yeah, I did go on to, I did video production and editing, because I just loved anything to do with cameras. Back at those stages, you didn't have, that was like 1994, 3. There was no such thing as you would pick up your phone and you would be able to make a film, you know, which is just, it blows my mind to think about it now. But yeah, so we had to try and find like big cameras and stuff. So I went to college to start using cameras, which was great. And I did that. I did that for a few years. And then music hit, and that was it. You know, music was a huge deal. So everything went out the window after that. So I spent a few years kind of bumming about learning music. And we actually went to a training for work program, which was run by the government, which was great. And 2 very important people came out of that training for work. One of them was Fran Healy from Travis.
Yeah.
The other one was Stuart Murdoch, who was in the Scottish band. God, I can't remember their name. That's absolutely terrible. Can't remember their name. But anyway, they won a Brit Award. So it was really, really incredible. But again, I just kind of stayed in the shadows quite a lot.
You mentioned that you were the youngest of your siblings, but I wanted to pick up on your relationship with one of your brothers called Stephen. Can you describe your relationship and give us an insight into Stephen's personality, his interests, and also his love of creativity?
Yeah, Stephen was 4 years above me. There's 4 years between all of us. There's 12 in total, and it's almost 4 years to the day, almost, between us. It's really strange, but Stephen was highly, highly creative from a very, very early age. To give you an example, when I was, say, 4, I've got a really clear memory for way, way back. I scare people with sometimes, people from my family. He could show you how to draw a circle and show you how the light can hit it. If it was up high, to the side, at the back, underneath, he was that type of person. He just instinctively knew. I'm not going to say he was incredible at doing these things, because he was quite young at that stage, but he instinctively had a gift for just knowing how to do things. The figures, he would have known how to do that really easily. It just have. But my relationship with him was just like any brothers, you know. You would fight, you would argue, but I was very, very, very close to him all the way through, and he was really, really protective. But all the way through, even from a really early age, he had an addictive personality. Straight away, you could just tell. If you were given a bag of crisps, we weren't really given lots of crisps, but if you were given a bag of crisps, he would want another bag. So there's your first indicator as to, there's potentially some issues ahead. So he was very like that, but he was also very spent with his creativity. He would do something and then go, right, next. He wouldn't want to keep it. He wouldn't want to look at it. He wouldn't want to admire what he'd done. He wouldn't even really bother about an opinion on it. He would just be, right, okay, next. And you'd be like, how the hell did you do that? Could you show me that bit with the, did you read that in a book? No. So he was very like that, He was definitely special that way.
As siblings, you grew up together with this common love, and you both loved action figures, and you shared this dream to create your own toy company called Stephen and David's Toy Cupboard. What were your favorite toy lines growing up? And do you still own some of those toys today?
Do I own any of them? I own some of the Star Wars figures that I had at the time. So there's your big giveaway. It's Kenner. So anything that's the 3 3/4 inch scale figures is what speaks to me. It always did. These were like gold dust, completely like gold dust. My love stayed. Stephen's moved on to other things, but I knew he would always be there in the background. A few years, when I say a few years ago, I'm talking maybe 20 odd years ago, I got a lot of the toys that we had back on eBay when eBay was starting to really kick in, and I was showing them to him and he was just like, and part of me was getting them just to see what his reaction would be, but we loved figures, and from a really early age, it was, we should, I said to him, it would be really cool, because the first Star Wars figures came out and there was only 12 and it was the main characters. So you didn't have like, I don't know, say people like Boba Fett and stuff like that in the very early incarnations. You just didn't have it. So we thought it'd be really cool if you could get, like either Boba Fett or, one of the, just any of the background characters that don't exist. Even a stormtrooper would be good to have. And how would you do that? Well, they've not came out, so maybe we could make them. Now that to me was some sort of, mystic stuff. I was like, no, you can't make them. He's like, aye, I bet you could. He was the one that made me see that you could actually do something like that. I went, no, this is for like big toy companies, and they send away to China. They send away to China to get these things made. And he went, I know, but it still starts as an idea. Now, to see a young child speaking like that, I was like, oh, right, okay, then on you go then. So how'd you do it? And he went, I'll figure it out. And my mum had just bought this new bar of soap, Imperial Leather, I think it was. But anyway, we had these wee metal action figures, and they were smaller than Star Wars figures. I think they were like 2.5 inch or something. And he put it into the soap, put this figure into the soap, and carved right round it so that it would be very, very smooth. Took it out, and I think he actually put it into the fridge. No, he put it into the fridge. Yeah, he put it into the fridge, took it out, and it was a perfect imprint of this figure. It was perfect. I mean, probably
almost like a mold. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And I thought to myself, that's incredible. And he went, but wait, you see this? He had borrowed some PVA glue from school, and he poured it in. I don't know. Don't ask me how he knew how to do all that stuff. I had no clue. No clue. And I think we left it for maybe an hour or so, and then he peeled it off, and it was nothing great, but it was a perfect little ghost figure. And he actually said at the time, oh, that could be the ghost of such and such, or that could be the ghost of, and I was like, oh, that's a brilliant idea. But he was coming up with them really quick, just all the time. But then he was just away and play something. He was away going playing something else. Well, I'm still sitting there with this. How did you, what was the, how did you do the, he was away playing. So yeah, incredible. What a real, I know that every family's got someone really, really they could just do things, you know, but he was definitely that. Definitely that for me.
In the time frame now, I wanted to jump forward many, many years from your childhood together. You both spending considerable amounts of time playing together, creating imaginary worlds, all set around action figures. And we move forward, but go back to 2012 when you tragically lost your brother. Can I ask the cause of Stephen's death?
Yeah.
And how did you manage to cope mentally and physically from his loss?
Well, I mean, I can answer the last part first. That's still a work in progress. Anybody that's lost anyone, especially anyone that kind of knew that the end wasn't going to be good, you're very aware of that. That's still a progress. That's still a thing to try and deal with, to be honest. But my dad moved to the north of Scotland when I was 5. He claimed it was for work. It wasn't for work at all. It was, but we never saw any of that money. My mum never saw anything. It turned out that he had a couple other kids up there. So this was a place that Stephen always wanted my dad's time. And I think he ended up going up there for a while when he was about 12. Stephen was a bit unruly. And my mum said, well, it's time for your dad to have a shot, you know, and to try and... I still don't agree with that idea. I don't think now, thinking about it, no, it was 400 miles away. He was at a bad point in his life. He was young. He's kind of going to, for lack of a better expression, a stranger in my dad. And because he was from Glasgow, I mean, he ended up going to school up there. Because he was from Glasgow, he was in a lot of fights because our accents are very different. So he was getting called this horrible word that's a Ouija, right, which is a Glaswegian. A lot of people watching that will understand what that means, but so he was quite, he wasn't a pushover, shall we say, and it wouldn't matter how many people there were, he just didn't have any fear. So so it wasn't great that way. So anyway, he came back down to where we live, and his voice had broken, all that. So he was like a totally different person to me, but he was still my brother, and he was still really, really protective. When we fast forward to 2012, he had moved back up there in 2011 because there's a lot of stuff going on down here. He had addiction problems to alcohol. And he says to me, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do here. Things are terrible here. I just don't know what to do. And I says, well, he went up the road. It's great. It's lovely up there. It's really, really peaceful. It's just the sea. It's great. I'd move there now if I could. But that's probably because I'd like to maybe be closer to him. I don't know. But anyway, he moved up there, and he went to see about trying to combat addiction to alcohol, and he did pretty well. And he moved to this place. It was like a lodge, and you're only meant to stay in the lodge for, I think it's 2 to 3 weeks. He ended up staying for 3 months. Now I've spoke to the lady that took him in, and I says, what did you keep him? What did he relapse and stuff like that? Because me and him lost touch a bit in the last year of his life because he was trying to get himself worked out. And he wasn't a big phone guy. I says, well, so why did he stay so long? And she said, it was because he basically would train people. We kept him because he was really a great motivator, and he was a great success. He stopped everything. He didn't do anything. And people that knew people that came in, we put them with him, and he would show them the ropes and all these different things, which was really, really nice to hear because I didn't know that. And they called him Sparky because he was brilliant with ideas. He just knew how to do things. He was one of the guys. So
which you mentioned before, yeah.
Exactly. And he took that. He did take that everywhere with him. He took that right to the end. But I met someone who had addiction problems, and the the clouds bumped into each other. So it really just got worse from there on in. Stephen was not the type of person you could give him, you know, a bottle of beer to. He would say, where's the rest of it? By the end, he was taking like big bottles of vodka, huge big bottles, 40-ounce vodka bottles. And this particular day, he wasn't meant to be having anything because him and the girl that he was with were kind of arguing about it. So he went out, and he was supposed to go to the shop, get her whatever it was that he was getting, come back, and that was it. But he had his mind set that he was going to have something to drink. The north of Scotland temperature in February 2012 is freezing, that you've never, even if it was like 2 degrees, you've never felt that wind like that before. Because I've been there, I've stood in the exact same spot a year after that, a year to the day, and I've never felt so cold in all my life. He sat down, had his bottle of vodka, and fell asleep. He never woke up. That's what happened, unfortunately.
It's a tragic story, not only losing your brother, but your parents as well, all the trauma of going through that mentally and physically and trying to compute those losses. We move forward again in the time frame, and several years after your brother's loss, you now decide to start making your own custom toy figures. What made you decide to establish your own online shop? Where did the name Lighting Boltz Toys come from? And what was the first toy figure you made and sold?
So I would say, I mean, there's a whole chunk there that's kind of missed out. All of it came through music. Music is really, that is my love. That is what I do, what I did. In terms of songwriting, guitar player, bass player, I pretty much play everything. I try and write music. I still try and write bits and bobs. But I had this project, I had this idea of a band that existed in the 60s. They didn't exist. It was an art project. So it was from 1960 to 1962, or 59 to 62. It was a specific style of music. So it was kind of like the Mersey beat stuff, or the kind of 60s Liverpool sound, I guess.
All the sort of British invasion bands that were so popular.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the days I was sitting listening to something on YouTube, and it was garage bands from the 60s, which if you haven't searched for, have a listen. It's incredible. Garage bands from the 60s that never done anything. The songs are brilliant. The quality of the songs are incredible. They're just brilliant. So I started listening to that, and I got the offer to visit our childhood home. So I went over to our childhood home. I took my son with me, and the very same house where the soap and the action figure. And my oldest brother went with us as well. We had a look around the house. Great. It was really nice to be back. I did a lot of filming, took a lot of photographs, left the house. We were allowed to go into the house ourselves. It was a council house, but it was like it was getting fixed up for another family. But the guys that were working on it says, "Look, we'll just leave you in here. We can just have a look at it, do what you want." So we spent about an hour in there, shut the door, and that was goodbye to that house. It really was. When I came back over to where I live now, which isn't far, I picked up the guitar and started writing this, what sounded like a pop song from the 60s. And having been listening to, like, putting all this garage music, and I'm really well versed in the Beatles, which everybody probably is, but their early career, the Hamburg, everything. So all of that in mind, I thought, this song sounds a wee bit, and I thought I was just taking it from that and just maybe lifting it. So a full song came out, and I hadn't written in a few years. And I thought, oh, look, like, you know, the track listings of things on YouTube, and all these bands were there, and they were called the something, the whatever, you know, whatever it would be, like the Beatles, the Stones, whatever. And I thought these songs are coming really, really quick. And every day there was one, another one, full, complete songs with a middle eight, the whole thing, ending, chord changes at right at the end, all the things that you love about the 60s, the early 60s. And I thought, these are coming so quick, they're kind of like lightning. It's like lightning. So I'd had a song, and it was something about like lightning striking, and like a relationship between boy and girl, all that stuff. So I thought, these are so hard to catch. I feel that I've not got enough time to do them, that kind of thing. So it was like catching these lightning bolts. So I thought, the Catch Lightning Bolts. And I really liked the name, the Catch Lightning Bolts. I thought that's quite a hard name to say, the Catch Lightning Bolts. So I kept writing these songs, and they were all based around falling in love, lightning bolts, and they weren't autobiographical. They were, well, I suppose they were in a way, but they were crafted songs. If you watch any of the stuff with the Beatles, John Lennon, he always says it became like a job, or like crafting. I can craft these songs together. I thought, I must be able to craft them as well. So I did. And that's what it became the Catch Lightning Bolts. And it was that for a few years. I started creating art all around this lightning bolts thing. By the time it got to the figures, it was like lightning hitting me in the head. That's what it felt like. I was telling someone about Stephen, and how it was somebody bumped into in the street. Says, one of the days he put this soap into this figure into the soap, and he made this perfect figure. And he was looking at me, and I was like, Jesus, that's a good idea. That's exactly what happened. That was around about 2016. And I thought, I'm going to make a figure of him. I'm going to make a figure of him. That'll be I'm going to make a figure of him. So I put the guitar down and then started and stopped thinking about recording them, and backing vocals and compression and all these different things, drum sounds. And I thought, right, I'm going to look into how you would do this. Went on to Google, tumbleweed, nothing at all. Oh, you need to contact this company, and then they'll put this bit of articulation on, and then you send it away to China, and then it costs £5,000. It all came down to £5,000. So I thought, but no. How did Stephen said that you would be able to make them somehow if you made this and you made that. Wait a minute, how did you do that? How would you make the start of the figure? That's when the mold thing started coming. How to make a mold. What is a mold? I didn't even know that you used silicone. I didn't know that you would need to take the bubbles out. I didn't know anything at all. Looked into it. I started buying vintage parts for figures, arms, legs, heads. And one night I was sitting there and I thought, right, maybe I could get a head that looks a bit like him. Then I just got a wee bit of cold feet. I thought, how do I make him? If I make him, then I've got nothing else to make. I've got nowhere else to go with him. It was almost like shutting the door on him. So I thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And then just at that point, the film Jewel came on, which is Steven Spielberg's first film.
Yeah.
Which is Jaws on the road. So I thought, I've always loved this film. And I just, again, looking into the distance, and I just was like, I'm going to make that film. So I did. And it was so easy. It was so easy. But before that, I was telling people, I was saying, the words were, really difficult to come out of my mouth. They were coming out that quick. I'm going to make these figures and they're going to sell. And they're like, you're going to make figures? What do you mean you're going to make figures? I'm going to make toys and I'm going to sell them. And this is going to really work. It's going to really, I can see it. It's going to really work. What do you mean figures? What are you going to like take people's likeness? Is that what you're saying? I mean, are you going to start making like the Beatles or something like that? Because you'll end up in jail, all this kind of stuff. So there are lots of people at that point saying the same thing. You're going to end up in trouble and you can't run a business from your house, all that kind of stuff. a lot of those people are not really in my life anymore, unfortunately, but I was so focused on making something, I didn't care. Didn't care. The jewel figure, as soon as I made it, I thought, I'll make up an Instagram. What the hell am I going to call it? And I thought, the Stephen and David's toy cupboard. Stephen and David's toy cupboard. Because that's what we were always talking about. Stephen and David's toy. I just felt like a mouthful. And then I thought, I'm going to call it Lighting Boltz Action Figures. Tentatively, I'm only going to call it that until I think of a better name. Anyway, got into the logo and I thought, right. Then it started, the nostalgic thing kicked in, Kenner. So I just took the label and just changed it. Basically like a toy company, kind of like the band that I was trying to make that never existed. So that's where the vintage and retro thing came in. And that was it. I put it on Instagram and I got an email from Adam Goldberg, who is from the Goldbergs, American TV producer, works for Disney, you know, genius. He sends me an email and I discarded it. I was like, yeah, I really like this figure. Could you give it to me? Could you sell me that? I'd like to put it onto my show. And I thought, everybody's got a show on YouTube, haven't they? It was like that. And I didn't even bother. A couple of days later, I'm in my job. I'm in the bank working. It's another message through. You know, did you get my message? I'd really like to, honestly, I'd love to put this on the show. You know, I don't know if you've ever watched Goldbergs. And the Goldbergs to me was a shop in the shopping centre which sold women's clothes. And as soon as I looked it up, I went, oh God, I was watching that the other night. Because there's 80s references. There's tons of 80s stuff in it. And I was like, yeah, you can have this figure. While I was doing that, I'd completed another figure, the airplane figure, Leslie Nielsen. And he went, can I have that as well? So to try and cut it short, he's probably got about 35 of my figures now, maybe more.
Oh, wow.
Really nice guy.
Can we now talk a bit about the creative process of designing and making a toy figure? Roughly how long does the process take? What materials and tools are required? And how much does it cost to produce, say, one of those figures?
Well, the best way to describe it, you could make figures from parts, like I said earlier. You could make, you know, somebody's arm doesn't need to necessarily resemble something you've never seen before. If you take an arm, repaint it or sculpt onto it, then it's your own complete arm. Excuse me. Or you could make a copy of that and no one's ever seen that arm before. You could cut someone's hand off of the action figure, stick it on an arm, cut the elbow off, cut the arm at the top off the shoulder, make a spike out of it, and no one's ever saw that figure before, but it's 3 figures in the one. To answer the question, it's made, you can make them out of that, which is what they call kit bashing. I don't do too much of that anymore. At the moment, I start to sculpt the heads 3D in 3D programs. I used to sculpt onto figures, but I use a 3D program now for heads. So I would just basically get a photograph, and I know that occasionally it can really resemble the person, but I don't. When back in the day, Luke Skywalker looked nothing like the original Farm Boy figure. He didn't look like, in fact, none of them looked like them. The only one that I thought really looked like the figure, Star Wars, was Darth Vader. Can't get him wrong. So I use a 3D program to try and get a wee bit more likeness, but again, it's all based around the Kenner thing. In terms of cost, you need to buy silicone, you need to buy resin. When you make the mold, you've made this. You'll basically like take the figure, take whatever part that you've sculpted or you have a copy of, put it into, I use like shot glasses for heads, put it in, like glue it down, pour in some silicone, and after a few hours, that silicone is cured. You cut out the head and you've got the perfect little silicone mold to start making copies. Then you put the resin in, and you can make as many as you want. It's quite expensive in terms of the materials. You know, a bottle of resin will cost you maybe £40. A bottle of silicone, again, will be about £40. So you get a lot out of that if you know how to do it. There's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of spilling. There's lots and lots to go through, which I had to find out on my own. But yeah, you also have to use, when you put silicone in, now you can do this. If once you've got the little shot glass, you put the silicone in to make the mold of the head. That will take up to 2 hours to cure, depending on the type of silicone that you've got. Sometimes the cure time can be longer, which eliminates bubbles. If you've done that and you've waited 2 hours and you pull the head out of it, then you've got wee bubbles on the face. They're not going away. So you need to use a pressure pot, which is basically, you know, you would use like a spray for paint, and it's used out of this pot basically, and you put the silicone based stuff inside and put the lid on, and then you use your air compressor and it pushes the bubbles down. You don't get any bubbles. I mean, I realize that's a lot of technical jargon, but that's how you do it. So there is a lot to it. Takes a while before you can get to that stage. Once you're there, you're sorted.
Let's talk about your creations, because they're mainly based on popular television and film characters, famous comedians, celebrities, filmmakers. Would you describe yourself as a nostalgist? And how many copies of each figure do you produce? And can you tell us where you shipped your items around the world? And do you have regular customers?
I do have regular customers. They're all American, every one of them. So all over the world, but America is the heart, really. They get it in terms of the artwork that goes into it. When I first thought about it, and someone called it art, I was like, no, it isn't. You know, this is definitely not art. Sitting, creating a song is art. That's what I was thinking. Or, you know, creating an album cover, that's art. Now I realize what I do is art. So I get it now, but I wasn't aware of it. Nostalgia, yeah, I mean, if I could change my name to that, I probably would. I live a lot of the time in the past, but I think it's important to have a good balance between, you know, you don't want to live in the past all the time. It would just kill you. But yeah, I don't think there's anybody at all that would see this, even yourself. Would you not just love to go back to when you were 10?
Yeah, I'm a bit like you. I would call myself a nostalgist, and pretty much I resonate with a lot of things you've said so far in our conversation, because all my influences are film and music, and most of the stuff I listen to or watch films or music that was produced probably 20 years before I was born. Mm-hmm. That's kind of all I'm interested in, really. Yeah.
Think about it now. I mean, there's just nothing now. All the answers, any questions that I might have, the answers are in the past. They're not in the future for me, you know, which sounds a bit grim, but live every day as it comes. And I think it's really important to have a good balance. You know, it's not just me to think about. I've got a son who's 10, but I look at him and I think, I would love to go back just for a day. It was the best time of your life. You had no worries whatsoever. They say things like, you know, school days were the best days of your life. I don't think that's really what they mean. I think what they mean is that time, that level of wonder. You don't know what's going to happen. You're bright-eyed about everything, and you think that the moon is made of cheese, you know.
Yeah, they mean childhood, don't they? And the innocence. Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. Playing with your pals, playing grass fights, you know, getting allowed to stay out to 9 o'clock at night when it's the middle of July, you know, when you're not at school. There's so many things that just make you feel warm about the past. And the beauty of being an adult is you can look at that and feel that same warmth. But then all of a sudden you look in the mirror and you go, who's that guy? oh God, that's me. That's me. You know, but so that's why that's where the figures, that's where they are, that's where they've come from. I create them because it does take me back. It really does take me back. Anything to take me back.
You've created so many different figures, and we could just be here all night naming them. Beetlejuice, Eddie Murphy in Raw, Columbo, Peter Venkman, the director Stanley Kubrick, Manuel from Fawlty Towers, and countless others. Do you have a personal favorite? And if so, why?
Do I have a favorite? I think as an adult, it's difficult to have favorites, but I think usually whatever I make the most current is usually my favorite. It's such a boring answer, but if I spent a lot of time on it, like I'll show you the Beetlejuice figure. You're not going to be able to see it in this light, but he took quite a long time. So I like anything that's quite challenging that way in terms of a figure. But no, I don't really have I mean, everybody will probably the first figure, I mean, the Joe figure, because it was the most retro figure that I think I could have made. You know, the packaging, which is what I absolutely love, is creating the packaging. Again, it feels dead easy. I just have the benchmark that I'm thinking, is it a song? It's not a song, but it's made up of the same elements of a song. It's got to be catchy, it's got to be quick, it's got to be, you know, got to get to the point quickly, and that's it. That's exactly how I see. It's really just like music.
Your answer leads nicely to my next question, because the toys are like works of arts themselves. They're incredible in terms of their likeness and resemblance to those characters. But another brilliant feature with your toy creations is the actual packaging design and the card illustration. Can you talk about the process of designing the packaging? And is that made by yourself or someone else?
No, probably too much of a control freak to let someone else do it, to be honest. No, so I do them. And it's just the same. I do a lot of walking. So when I'm out walking, which is quite a lot, I basically, an idea will come to me. Whether it be, I mean, there's a Stanley Kubrick, it's just a blank card. And there's like the back. So that will maybe come to me, and I always like the colors and stuff like that will come to me quite quickly as well, or just ideas. Again, it's like recording a song. You throw everything at it, and then you take the elements that don't work. It does it itself. It really does it itself. If someone says to me, I mean, if you were to give me, there's a cool one. So there's the Bruce Wayne one. So I've had to make another one of that. And it was quite difficult because if you look, I mean, you can't really see it, but there's a lot of gold in there.
Yeah,
to match.
I love the logo, and that obviously resembles the Tim Burton 1989 film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just put yourself back into that. You transport yourself back to that. There's a lot of toy makers out there that don't do that. They'll just put what they see's fit, which is great. That's art. That's art, and you would never argue with anybody that does that. But I like to try and keep a tiny bit of what the film was in terms of the marketing. We're coming up to, I mean, we're in August now. I remember when Batman 1989 came out, it was August the 10th. And in the bus shelters, there was always these big bat signs everywhere. So I just put myself back to that point and think, what would it look like if they had released that? Because they didn't come out. You know, there were these 5-inch figures.
I remember the figures, yeah. And there was a huge publicity campaign with the Batman film, with a teaser trailer that wouldn't show a great deal of the action, and then a longer trailer nearer the release of the film. And of course, you had the bubblegum cards as well, which I think were produced by Topps.
That's right.
Yeah, so yeah, you're making me nostalgic
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And then I think it took 12 months for it to be released on video cassette.
Oh,
That's such long window between cinema release and home entertainment, which is sadly gone now. There's no window now between theatrical and streaming or
Yeah.
DVD or Blu-ray.
It's just not the same. It's just not the same. But yeah, I mean, it just the card art is the bit that is so easy for me to do it, because it's just, you feel like you're actually, although you know you're only making one. That was another question earlier I probably didn't answer actually, but I don't make a lot of this specific figure, because it's I shouldn't be. I don't really have the agreement to be able to do that. I'm quite happy to make one or two, but I wouldn't want to take the pee with these kind of things, because it's not really my job. I just like a little nod towards you know, something like Batman or whatever.
I think it makes it makes them more sought after then and more collectible. If you're only making single numbers, if you're mass producing them, it kind of takes away the novelty value in some ways, doesn't it? Makes it.
And there's where the art is.
Yeah.
Which I've learned now. To me, it was just, no, I'm just making a couple of figures, but it wasn't really, that's not really it. People take these really seriously. I've got emails from people, big, long emails. You've changed my life with this figure, you know, and great. I'm really pleased that they absolutely love this figure. But to me, it was just because I wanted to get it out of my head, because it kept pecking. Yeah, it kept pecking at me. Oh, make this figure, make this figure, make this figure. And then you go, I've made this figure. Are we okay? Are we good? Right? We've made this figure. Great. Make this other figure. So it just keeps going and going and going. And then you've obviously got commission stuff. People want you to make figures for their dad or something like that.
Can we talk about some of the exposure that Lighting Boltz has gained? Can you discuss the Nissan USA Thrill Driver Commission of the actor Eugene Levy as the character Dragon? And can you also talk about some of your celebrity fans and buyers, including the comedian Leigh Francis?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not really into the whole name dropping thing. I'll tell you some, all right. Leigh Francis came through Andy Goldstein, who's the guy for Talk Sport, quite friendly with him. We have a lot of chat back and forth, dead nice guy. And one of his friends is obviously Leigh Francis. Leigh Francis reached out and just said, love your figures. These are great, you know. And anytime you see a blue tick coming into your box, it tends to jump to the top. Isn't that funny? And he was talking about that he loves like the Lost Boys and stuff like that. And he is a huge Lost Boys fan. And just dead normal and really, really nostalgic. So he's in my gang straight away. So I says to him, look, I'm going to send you down this figure of David from the Lost Boys. And he was over the moon with it. One of my pals had said, by the way, he's just put this video on Twitter. I mean, it's literally an endorsement of him with your figure. And I went, no way. And he went, aye, there you go. So we just didn't need to do that, you know, because otherwise I just have kept it completely secret. I wouldn't have said anything about it. But yeah, that was worth shouting about. That was incredible. It really, really was incredible. Some of the others, you know, I'll tell you one more. The other guy, Ollie Murs, one of the nicest guys I've ever met, actually. Just so what you would expect. There's no agenda. There's just, you know, he wanted me to make a figure of his fiance, which I did, which was really hard. Ollie, thank you. But it was really good. It was such a good thing to do, and I'm going to be making a figure possibly of him at some stage as well. But again, just dead normal, dead down to earth. So in terms of the Eugene Levy stuff, that was someone that reached out from, must have been like somebody that worked for a company that works for Nissan, had sent me an email saying, would you like to be involved in the 2022 Super Bowl ad campaign? You get things like this all the time. You know, you get emails all the time saying, would you like to wear our clothes? And you know that 9 times out of 10, that's no the case. So I just went, very good, and just left it. I'm really not very trusting. I should probably look into emails a wee bit more. Now I'm a bit better at it, but I looked at it again, and sometimes I'll research the name, and I did, and it seemed like a legit company. So I says, what is it you're looking for? Like, what do you mean? And they just said, look, we're looking for someone to make a figure for an ad campaign for our new car. So I was like, yeah, but what do you mean? Well, I think you should do is jump on a call with us and we'll ask you some questions and see if it's something that you want to do. You can maybe agree a small fee and then we can go for it. So I decided, yeah, I'll do that. So I went on and there was 9 people all on this. They were all from Nissan.
No pressure.
Oh,
The corporate world are watching you very closely.
yes, that's exactly what it was.
Big brother's watching you.
That's what it was. And it was just, they were all very, you could tell that they'd spent a lot of time on Teams, right? And we'll make you think that you can make this figure, that kind of thing. But I answered the questions. I must have passed. It says, yeah, we'd love you to do this. And I says, okay, I've just got, have you got any questions? Have you got any questions? I went, yeah, I've just got one question. Who am I making? Who is it? What is it about? Can I tell you that? I went, right. So I'm doing it, but you can't tell me who it is. No. You need to sign a non-disclosure. I went, right, I'll sign it. I'll sign it. And they were like, really? You mean you? So then they started to put me in the back foot. I thought, Matt, would I maybe be signing something that I shouldn't be signing here? So anyway, I got the contract and had a look at it. And I just took a bit of a leap of faith. And I just went, well, they're not going to, it doesn't say that I need to do anything here. What they didn't tell me is that we obviously had to apply for the likeness of Eugene Levy. So once I'd signed the document, they'd said, look, this is who it is. And I went, oh my God, it's Eugene Levy. I was like, how the hell am I going to make him? That's what I was thinking. And he was wearing all this leather gear and he had tiny wee tattoos. He had 4 tattoos. His hair was all silver. And so this is about maybe 6 months before it came out. And I had 3 weeks to make 50 figures. 50 figures. A day is 1. Now, a day is 1. Now, with this experience, a day is 1. I can get a lot more done now because I pretty much broke everything making those 50. So I managed to do it, but the artwork was challenging. Everything was challenging. We had lots of challenges. We got through them all. I basically worked for them for a few months, really, because we had to make more, but it was all legit. It was all above board. It was his likeness. I had lawyers telling me, yeah, it's fine. Go and make him. You have the likeness rights. So you can imagine my mind just went straight back to the very beginning. How cool would it be to make your own figure? Oh, it's like people in China make tons and tons of figures. It was me eventually that done it. And it was a huge achievement, but I couldn't tell anyone, couldn't say anything. When it came out, it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible.
I can imagine. Mm-hmm. My next question, how do you manage to balance family life, a part-time job in banking and running Lighting Boltz toys? And in a typical day, how much time do you spend working on Lighting Boltz? And do you intend quitting your job and running it as a full-time venture?
Well, I've already changed hours in work. So I only work a couple of days a week. I don't work any later than 12:30. As soon as I've done that, I spend maybe 2 or 3 hours making figures. You can't do it any more than that. You just can't. It's like someone just saying, you know, be creative now. You just can't really do that. So you need to put the time into it. Later on, when we've got dinner out the way, I'm very active with my son. He's with me constantly. He understands things now a lot better than he used to. So I'll maybe spend a wee bit of time at night. When I was doing the Eugene Levy stuff, that was 6 in the morning. Then I would start work at 8 in the morning. I would do that work. Then I would start on the figures till 12 o'clock at night. Then I'd be up at 6. And that's how that worked. So like I say, I pretty much broke everything doing that.
Yeah, imagine that was a lot of pressure. And of course, you would have had commissions coming in at the same time as well.
Yeah.
So more demand for work. So it must be challenging, quite stressful, and balancing that with
it was,
your family life as well.
It was terrible. It was absolutely. I would be extremely reluctant to do anything like that ever again. I've done it once. I don't need to ever do it again. There's no amount of money. I'm not a money grabber or anything like that. So, like, there's no amount of money that would make me do that alone again. I would hire people in. I would get people in. I'd get other toy makers involved. I wasn't really, when you don't know something, it's ignorance is bliss. You don't know how to do these things. And then eventually when you're put into these things, you go, all right, that's what it was about. No, thank you. So I would be quite reluctant to do that again. Certainly not 50 in 3 weeks, 50 over 6 months.
Have you considered quitting your job at the bank and maybe doing this as a full-time venture? Could it be done?
No, I don't. I mean, I'll be honest. I like the routine of normality, right? When you get involved, there's a lot that I've held back in terms of, the exposure and stuff, was on the telly and stuff like that. And you get lots of people contacting you, people from your past, oh, I didn't know you could do this. And I knew you were going to be good at something, all that stuff. And, so it kind of made me, I've kind of moved back. There's lots of things that I turned down. There was another telly thing. I just turned it down. I just didn't want to be involved in the front anymore,
Yeah.
So in terms of the normality, I quite like the normality of working and then going and doing this if I want. And I don't like there to be too much pressure. Yourself, if you get too much pressure on something, it usually turns out crap. It usually, I could do that better.
Takes the joy out of something as well, I think.
That's it.
Sometimes.
You don't want to live where you're working, and then you look at like a paintbrush and go, I want to kill that paintbrush. So it doesn't really. I like to keep it really nice and light with the figures. I want to keep loving it. But I know specifically, I'll get bored and I'll stop. I will. That's what I do with creativity wise. I move on to something else. That music thing keeps coming back, and I want to get that done. Even if no one ever hears it, I just want to get it done.
I've got one final question before we move on to the questions that we ask all Your Take guests to wrap up the interview, which is the quickfire 13 questions.
Okay.
David, what are your long-term plans with Lighting Boltz? Would you like to establish your own shop? And what toy creations are you currently working on or plan to create?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love to have a shop. I would absolutely love to have a shop. I think that'd be great. You could just wander in whenever you want. A shop kind of like, I don't know if you remember, like Flip. Remember Flip? They do old retro jeans and all these different like 60s clothes and stuff. That was a great shop. Something like that. Old toys, like convention-y type of stuff. You make your own toys, you put them out. But it's an art store more than a shop, if you like. Just a kind of happening, a place like that, I think would be absolutely brilliant. In terms of working on stuff at the moment, I'm working on the Ghostbusters multiverse figures, which I didn't realize is actually quite a. Fans of Ghostbusters contact you a lot if you put something like I made the Eddie Murphy Winston. He wasn't meant to play. He was offered the role and he decided to decline and do Beverly Hills Cop. But the multiverse thing is a what if scenario. So I love that. So I'm working on those at the moment. So it's going to be John Belushi for Peter Venkman. Obviously, he was going to be. That would be just incredible. Can you imagine him as Peter Venkman? But obviously, we wouldn't take anything away from Bill Murray. But as another film completely, if you just put your mind into that for a sec. So I'm doing those. What was the other part of the question? What was it? What else was it?
It was mainly about what toy creations you got in the works, and of course also want to ask you if you maybe would want to work on any other creative avenues outside of the toy making.
Oh God, yeah, totally. I mean, I'm working on badges and stuff like that just now. Love badges. And I'm thinking about making t-shirts as well, retro t-shirts, but they're going to be retro t-shirts. I'm reluctant to make a white t-shirt with just like Batman on it. No, I want it to be a lot more retro and vintage baseball t-shirt styles with the ring spun neck with a, you know, that's still in the works. And also the music thing. Also, I'm a photographer as well, so I love all that. We're making a documentary type thing. It's only going to last like 5 minutes, but it's all to do with the toy thing and the crossover with Stephen and stuff like that. My mind's constantly going creative wise. I couldn't cope without it, and I can't cope with it. So, but yeah, totally want to do anything creative.
A creative mind, a nostalgist, somebody who looks back to the past. I think we're going to have some interesting answers on these, and I think we're going to share a lot of common themes. Here are the quick fire 13 questions. You don't have to think about these in any depth. Okay. Just what comes straight into your mind. Here we go, David McGurk. Here are the final questions. Number 1, David, what is your favorite pastime?
No depth. Listening to music.
We move on to cinema, and we've obviously touched upon film many times this evening. What is your favorite film and why?
The Holy Mountain. If you've never seen it, watch it. Even go on and just check out the trailer. It is one of the most artistic films you'll ever see, ever.
I know the film, and I'm trying to think of the director's name. He's a surrealist, mad filmmaker.
That's right.
And I'm trying to think of the film he made in his later years that's kind of highly rated. I've got it on DVD and it's escaped my mind.
I know the exact one you're thinking of, and I can't think of it either. Holy Mountain's the only one that comes
with something Sangra. Oh, it's gone. Doesn't matter. Right. From film to novels now. Who's your favorite novelist?
I don't really have one. I'm more into kind of probably Stephen King.
If you could have had a different profession, what would it be?
You mean other than working in a bank?
Or making toys?
Oh God. Oh, there's a hard question. Probably someone that cuts grass. Something really menial. Something that doesn't require a lot of thought, I think.
Not a musician?
Well, a musician, yeah, but yeah, I'd be a musician, but you'd need to be still working in the back.
Who in life would you say has been your greatest inspiration?
I would say probably my mum. Everybody would probably say that, but if it wasn't her and it wasn't someone in my family, it would be John Lennon.
A very good choice. I'm a huge Beatles fan. They made such a big impression on my life in my 20s. After walking into a record shop and the owner saying, "Have you listened to the Beatles?" And I was listening to a lot of blues and 50s rock and roll. I was like, "No." And he said, "Listen to Rubber Soul and it'll change your life."
Wow.
And I think it's fair to say that it did. I just became a diehard fan.
Just listen to your blues. Just put your blues on. Helter Skelter.
Next, we talk about newspapers. Do you read a newspaper? And if so, which one?
I don't. I'll tell you why. I don't really look at anything to do with the news. I just don't like it. It just feels really negative to me. And I don't want to feel down about events that are going on around the planet. Obviously, we need to know about things like the coronavirus. We need to know about wars. We need to know about these things. So the things that you need to know about, I know about. But, you know, a wee cat getting stuck up the tree, I don't really look at things like that. And if I do look at newspapers, it's really just, it's like local stuff. Daily Record obviously was prevalent for me for years, and I was in the Daily Record recently, and that kind of reinvigorated. I thought, oh, man, that paper that I've read all my life. So probably that, Daily Record.
Next, we go on to cuisine, eating, food. What is your favorite food?
Oh, it's got to be Chinese. Either that or a steak. Anything that I don't need to cook. Probably a steak with really, really, really well done roast potatoes. We like the beef dripping and lovely gravy. Yeah, I'm starving now, but yeah, probably that's great. A really rich dinner, with nice veg.
From a steak to a Chinese
takeaway. I know. Yeah, I changed my mind. It's the steak. It's the steak every time.
So now, unusually, asking you to choose your favorite cultural icon, who would you choose?
It's still got to be, I mean, if you could choose the Beatles, it's them. They changed culture completely. So it would be, if I could choose the Beatles as a person, it would be them. If not, it would still be either McCartney or Lennon.
Next, we asked our guests to choose their favorite curse word and why they chose it. What is yours?
Am I allowed to say it?
Yeah, of course you can.
Are you sure?
We've had quite a few bucks and all sorts over the past year.
Well, I think you'll find that a lot of Scottish people like the word cunt. All right. Purely, so sorry if that offends people. But here you use it as a term of endearment. He's a good cunt. So you can kind of see that razor edge has come off it slightly, or he's just a cunt. So he is a cunt. Or it's unmistakable. As soon as you say it, everyone, shouldn't really be saying that word. But that, for me, growing up, everywhere was used. It's only now when I hear people going, oh, that's like chalked in a blackboard to me. And I get it, but it's still my favorite word.
What would you say is your favorite place or holiday destination?
Favorite place, holiday destination, I would say, well, anywhere in America, but I would say New York. Went to New York, 1996. It was amazing.
Yeah, I went in 99 for my 18th, and it left a huge impression. It felt like another world at the time.
Yeah.
You know, obviously now Britain's changed and caught up, I guess, with the kind of American lifestyle, and it's not all that dissimilar, but yeah, it felt like being in another world back then.
It's not as much as like a dreamland as it was. To go to Central Park now, you'd be like, you know, I could go to Central Park, send you a text of a picture of it and go, I'm in Central Park. It's not like going to heaven anymore, you know, but still great place.
Music has become a recurrent theme in this interview, but now I'm going to ask you to choose your favorite music artist. I think I know who it's going to be, and your favorite album.
Okay. Well, there's actually a number of them. I'm a huge XTC fan. Andy Partridge.
They're a great band. I've been trying to get Andy Partridge on this YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are such a great band. Yeah.
Incredible.
And their songs, when you listen to them, sound easy to play, but they are not.
Oh God.
They are so sophisticated.
Yeah. I mean, I met him. I met him in 1986, believe it or not, when Skylarkin had just come out, and my older brother, they had made a single, and he came onto this TV program that was shot about a mile down the road from me, and he was right there, and my older brother went up and, can I give you this? Can I give you this single? That kind of thing. And he looked at it and he went, oh yeah, I'll absolutely give it a listen. And he had the shades on, and he was Andy Partridge. And he just went like, all right, how's it going? And I was just like, who are you? Not realizing that this is the guy that wrote Dear God, this is the guy that is the Dukes of Stratosphere, this is a genius here.
Senses Working Over Time, another great single. And I always thought Colin Moulding,
the bass player.
He wrote a lot of the hits as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
I thought he was a great songsmith as well. The two
Amazing.
of them just worked. Yeah.
I used to get them mixed up, the voices. I used to think that I wasn't really sure, like 10 Feet Tall and stuff. I didn't know if that was Andy Partridge or him, or Making Plans for Nigel. I didn't know that was Colin Moulding and not Andy Partridge. So they're incredible. They are absolutely incredible. But it's very difficult for me to choose between them and, well, no, it's not. It is the Beatles, but in terms of songs and stuff like that, Andy Partridge is incredible. An album, I'll pick a Beatle album. How can you pick one Beatles album? Probably Revolver or the White Album. Revolver.
XTC gets a thumbs up from me. I think that's an interesting choice, and they're not. They came from not far from here. I'm based in Bristol, and they were from Swindon. Which is about 40 miles away. So
you must know someone. Like anyone out there, get Andy Partridge on this. I would love to see it.
I managed to get his email, but he never responded. So, but I would love to.
And I'll tell you something else about Andy Partridge. He's a toy maker.
Is he?
Yes. Oh. He makes old toys that you would get free in cereal boxes or...
I did know this, sorry.
Yes.
Because he did an interview on a music channel that I listen to a lot with, the names escape me, David, the guys who used to present...
radio guys, weren't they? Can't remember their name. The two of them were...
They did the whistle test. Mark Ellen's one. David, it's gone out of my head.
The guy that used to remind you of Paul McCartney. He looks a bit like Paul McCartney. What's his name?
That's Mark Ellen.
Mark Ellen.
And I'm trying to think of the other guy. It comes to me when we wrap up.
Yeah.
What would you say next is your greatest achievement to date?
Probably the Eugene Levy thing. Yeah, I'll be dull and say that. That's the most exposure. You know, you're in charge basically of a final product. The buck stops with you, and you've got maybe 30 people relying on you for that. That's the biggest achievement, I would say, by far. And then watching it on the television and knowing that you were part of that, and knowing that the figure went to him, he's got the first ever figure. That's a big thing. I don't think about it or anything like that too much, but that's the biggest achievement by far.
And David McGurk, the final one. How do you wish to be remembered?
Just as a really good dad, really. I haven't spoke much about him, but he really is my life. I really juggle everything around him. Rocco, he is 10, and I didn't have that. You know, my dad was a 2 out of 10, so I would like Rocco to be thinking that I'm a lot higher than that. That's how I'd like to be remembered.
A lovely way to end this evening's interview. Thank you for sharing your story. It's been interesting because, you know, we have spoken to a toy seller who runs a shop in Leicester called Leicester Vintage, but not someone involved in making toys. So it's been interesting to hear your perspective, and it's been an interesting interview because it started on a very kind of sad theme with all the tragedy in your early years, but what shone through in your later years was the kind of coming from sadness and tragedy and using that to positive effect, to fulfilling your childhood dream that you shared with your brother.
Yep.
And doing something you love. And this love of creativity has just shone through, whether it be film, whether it be photography, filmmaking,
music, anything.
And all the nostalgia that comes with it.
Yeah.
I've done, I think, 80 interviews, of which about 70 are up on the channel now. But of all the interviews I've done, this has been one of the most enjoyable and one of the most interesting from my perspective. And I think if we'd have sat down this evening, this not be recorded, just sat down as two people talking and sharing a love of things, I think there was a lot of common ground we would have shared, and I think we would have got on particularly well in all
Definitely.
sincerity.
Well, you know, I'm always here for the good chat. And that's the thing about making toys or doing it in creative or just putting things out. People don't get to really see you. They don't really get to know what makes you tick. And you're the only person that I've decided to do that, because I have knocked a lot back. But I watched a lot of your stuff, and it's really heartfelt. So thanks very much for asking. And anytime, you know, give a wee chat anytime.
Thank you kindly. That's very kind words. And a lot of things resonated, particularly the music and the songwriting. That was something I took up during the lockdown. I taught myself to play and write songs.
Oh, did you? Great.
Yeah, that was a kind of hobby that I took up pretty badly, but just the love of cinema and music, that's pretty much been my world.
Yeah.
From such a young age. So thanks for sharing your love as well.
No
and
problem.
how do we find out more about Lighting Boltz and obviously the toys you're making?
Yeah, so always the most active on Instagram, which is just Lighting Boltz Action Figures. You'll see it looks like the Kenner logo. Yeah, so Instagram mainly. I've got Facebook, but I'm not a huge lover of it. Twitter, not a huge lover of it. Instagram is where I'm active all the time. So even MD, any questions or whatever, just just fire away. I'll always get back to you.
And finally, can I ask you as well, the online shop, what is the domain?
Yeah, so that's the big cartel, and that is just Lighting Boltz Toys.
And yeah, I wish you all the very best for the future. I'll be keeping a close eye on your progress and future toys you make. And I wish you all the very best and all the success in the world.
Thank you very much. Great to speak to you. And just anytime, give us a shout.